Oh, there's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello, BookTube. I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome to my channel and welcome back to another book haul. I've got maybe 15 books here to show you in no particular order. This is a book that was recommended, not to me personally, but was recommended by the Irish novelist Ronan Hession on his Twitter feed, and it is improbably titled Lake of Urine by Guillermo Stitch. Improbably, it turns out, an Irish writer, Guillermo Stitch. What kind of a name is that? It's absolutely savage, absurdly funny, and truly original. It doesn't really sound like a Sean book, but I was curious. Published last year by a publisher in New Jersey that I've never heard of, Sagging Meniscus Press. Guillermo Stitch lives in Spain, but I believe is an Irish novelist. There is no synopsis. On the back, one of the blurbs says, "We follow the fate of the Wakeling sisters, along with a supporting cast of batshit crazies." Here are the first 3 paragraphs. They're very short, pretty much a sentence each. If anybody tells you this story isn't true, they are lying. It is a true story. I'm lying if it isn't, and I don't lie. It's the story of me and Ms. Emma Wakeling, and the winter I was holed up with her and her 2 girls, Bowl and Urine. What a winter. It was the deepest we had ever known, and I am uniquely qualified to say this because I know exactly how deep it was. I measured it with a piece of string, and there hasn't been as deep a winter since. Well, that definitely gets my attention. So the Lake of Urine is, the urine is the daughter? And there's the measuring, there's the string. Oh my God! I have been curious about the Korean-American novelist Paul Yoon for some time, and this is his latest novel. It's not that new. I think it came out more than a year and a half ago. Run Me to Earth. This novel is actually set in 1960s Laos. I had my first taste of Paul Yoon's writing when Kim of, at that time, K. Becker's Books, now more recently. But we both read a Paul Yoon short story that was available online, and we did a little chatty video about it. That was our first collaboration, but certainly not our last. I really like that story and have been curious to try him all the more ever since. It's about 3 young orphans in 1960s Laos, and then their entwined destinies across decades. Even though I have another of her books on my shelf that I've never read, and it's been on my shelf for about 5 years, I picked up this latest book because it appeals to me even more than the other one. This is Handiwork by Sara Baume, an Irish writer, and I have her novel A Line Made by Walking, a beautiful hardcover edition. I've never gotten to it. This one is published by Tramp Press, and it's just a beautiful little book and very short chapters. It is a contemplative short narrative charting the daily process of making and writing. And Ronan Hession loved it, I believe. I think I'm remembering that correctly. Here is the first chapter, the first paragraph set off on its own page. Amateurs, Stephen Knott writes in Amateur Craft, History and Theory, have their own convoluted, inefficient, and superfluous processes of production that reflect their subjectivity and freedom from the obligation to produce a defined output. I bought a chunky biography of Queen Victoria, and when I bought it because it was brand new, newly in print, I thought it was more recent than it is. I think it was actually written in 1948, but that's okay. I will still read it. It's called The Reign of Queen Victoria by Hector Bolitho, and it's a big one. I am obsessed with Queen Victoria, so I've got yet another biography. I think I've read 4 already. Let's give this one a try. This, I believe, I first heard about on Eric Carl Anderson's channel. We Are All Birds of Uganda by Hafsa Zayyan. Beautiful book, just a really gorgeous hardcover. And just published, I think, last year. Set in 1960s Uganda and present-day London. All about racial tensions, generational divides, and what it means to belong. It's a debut. And the author, Hafsa Zayyan, is a writer and lawyer in London. Now, is it just me, or does this book have a very citrusy smell? Like, it's not like, it's almost like a perfume scent. Now, do any of the other books? No? So what is it? Have you ever heard of a book that had a scent? It's very noticeable. It's citrusy. It's very pleasant. And it's not like something got spilled on it, I'm sure. I think it's actually... Am I hallucinating, people? What do you call it when you hallucinate with your nose? It's a very gorgeous scent, and I'd never noticed it until right now. And maybe I'll do another smell check in the morning to make sure it's not just the wine talking, although I've only had about 3 sips of my glass of wine. What the hell? I know book sniffing is a thing, but is it just the dust jacket? The inside smells like a normal book, but the dust jacket is very scenty, very perfumey. Like, not overpoweringly, but very noticeable. Fascinating. Eric, how about your book? Did it smell? Did it have a pretty smell? Next, I have an Egyptian novel, and again, I think I found out about this. I get so many book recommendations from Ronan Hession's Twitter feed. The Girl with Braided Hair by Rasha Adly, translated from Arabic by Sara Enany. Very new. Adly was born in Cairo in 1972. She has written 6 novels. This one actually was longlisted for a prize that I wasn't aware of. It's informally called the Arabic Booker, the International Prize for Arabic Fiction in 2018. It is about an art historian restoring an unsigned portrait of a beautiful woman. She finds a lock of hair in the painting, and the story goes from there. I believe the earlier part of the story is actually set in Egypt. I guess I should call this the Ronan Hession Book Haul. So this is a Charcoal Press book. Andrea Jeftanovic, Theatre of War, translated by Francis Riddle. I don't know anything about this book. Jeftanovic is a Chilean novel born in Santiago in 1970. So it's translated from the Spanish. And this is a debut about the psychological effects of the conflict in the Balkans on a family who flee to South America to build a new life. Okay, intriguing. I don't think this was Ronan, but somebody on Twitter put this on my radar. I knew of its existence. And it is a work of literary essays. But it's essays about writing in prose style, called Suppose a Sentence by Brian Dillon. And maybe I read a short excerpt of it, or I can't remember, but this kind of thing can be very academic and just abstruse and not my thing. This one sounded like it might be more my thing, so I got it. John Banville described the author, Brian Dillon, as a literary flaneur in the tradition of Baudelaire and Walter Benjamin. Oh, it's kind of a sequel to his other essay collection, Essayism, which I didn't buy because it's got an ugly blue cover. Okay, well, the first sentence is 2.5 pages, almost, it's about 2 pages long. I'm going to read you most of the first half, where there's a semicolon, but it goes on for another page and a bit. The title of the essay is Sensibility as Structure. It's quite intriguing. Or maybe a short sentence after all, a fragment in fact, a simple cry of pain or pleasure or succession of the same cries, that is, compounded and spoken at the last, in extremis, or another sort of beast entirely, whose unmeaning cry is just an overture, before the sentence sets in distinguished motion its several parallel clauses, as though it were a creature with at least 4 legs. Every sentence was once an animal, says Emerson. So slowly but deliberately intent on its progress, so stately in its procession, so lavish in attention to the world it passes through, so exacting in the concentration it demands in turn that, what? Here already the sentence swerves, and although you are sure you've caught the sense, the shape has begun to elude you, as if the animal in question were squirming or shaking itself loose of your grip, or turning to bite you and then take off, against all entreaties, into a mist of metaphor, where you must follow, closing the gate of this punctuation mark behind you. Semicolon, and it goes on for another page. That is really quite something. This is another book by the lovely Tilted Axis Press. Strange Beasts of China by Yan Ji, translated from the Chinese by Jeremy Tiang. And this is about an amateur cryptozoologist commissioned to uncover the stories of a particular city, Yong'an's fabled beasts. Part detective story, part metaphysical inquiry. Well, that sounds like that will be a challenging read. Yan Ji is female. She writes fiction in both Chinese and English, but apparently this was written in Chinese. And this is a gorgeous hardcover novel from Seagull Books. They put out the most gorgeous books, especially their hardcovers. And this is from the German writer Reinhard Jirgl. It's called The Unfinished, translated from the German by Iain Galbraith. And this book is one that Mel of Mel's Bookland Adventures has done, I think, a full review. She certainly talked about it on her channel, because it's set in the Czech Republic in 1945, and it is about the expulsion of the Sudeten Germans. And that is Mel's family history. So she immediately got a copy. It's a story that's very personal for her and her family. And Mel has talked very poignantly, very powerfully about what the Sudeten expulsion was about. I had never known a thing about it until I heard her talk about it, and it's heartbreaking. This sets the tone, the opening couple paragraphs. Later, trucks with loudspeakers pushed into town, followed by militia. In the beginning, as in earlier times, when the pest came close, human voices raised in alarm sounded from every quarter. Many shot and beaten to death this morning. For hours, the streets and alleyways of the small Sudeten town of Komoto reverberated to the same Czech announcement. You have 30 minutes. Maximum baggage 8 kilos per person. Congregate at the station. Persons disobeying this order will be punished under martial law. Thus began, now that the war was over, the wild expulsions. This is a work of non-fiction. It's actually a published diaries of somebody who was not famous. I talked about this in my Zoom chat with Heidi of My Reading Life. A Free-Spirited Woman, The London Diaries of Gladys Langford, 1936 to 1940. There she is. Edited by Patricia and Robert Malcolmson. And it's a gorgeous book. I got it for like $6 off Amazon Japan. It's a brand new book. And it was funny because, and I said this in the video with Heidi, that somebody, people on Twitter, bookish people on Twitter, they'll just take a photo of their recent book haul. They won't make a 45-minute video like I do, but they'll just take a picture and put it on Twitter. And this was featured in one of the somebody's picture. And it was weird because in the picture it was like this. It was the only one in the stack. There was more in the stack where the thing was upside down. So I had trouble actually reading the title, and when I found out I could buy it for $6 and it sounded kind of interesting, I bought it. Gladys Langford, born in 1890, was a free spirit and an aspiring writer never published in her lifetime. And these are just her observations of London in the 1930s. And that's the whole thing. And it's published by Volume L, which in Roman numerals I have no idea what that is, by the London Record Society, which is the Boydell Press in 2014. But when I got the book, I realized there's the front. So the spine is actually printed upside down. It's the way they printed it on purpose. And people made comments. I can't remember what they said, but this is a thing. This was the thing. I don't know. It seems really strange to me. But anyway, I will try the book at some point. Well, here's the first entry in the published diary. Sunday, the 25th of October, 1936. Plenty of my own company nowadays. Hardly see a soul in the house, though Mrs. Robinson gave me some trifle, evidently because I gave her pastries yesterday. In pursuance of my plan to do something with my Sundays, went to the Tate Gallery this afternoon to see the Henry Tonks exhibits. Cannot say I found them appealing. Numbers 13, 73, portraits I thought good. Also 2 children seated in a green field and a small child lying on its back playing with its toes. Quite a few people there, probably inspired by Jan Gordon's article in today's Observer. Art and Artists, The New English, and Professor Tonks, page 18. Intended attending South Place concert this evening, but a heavy hailstorm and a thunderstorm made home appeal very strong. Then, too, I'm reading a new novel. I don't read many since Welling's Jibe. Cathedral Close, 1936, and finding it very interesting. It is by Susan Goodyear, Margaret Bryan Matthews, a new writer, I presume. I do love my home. I wish I had more time to enjoy it. An ex-servicemen's meeting protesting against fascism was in progress in Trafalgar Square. A company of policemen stood at ease, and great numbers stood about, but no trouble appeared to be threatening. Well, that does kind of capture my imagination. I will have to get to this someday. And here is a novel that was published right at the end of 2020, The Stromness Dinner by Peter Benson. I found out about it on Twitter. I'd never heard of the author. He has written 10 novels. Oh, but I remember this one is so weird because there's no biographical information about him in terms of where he is located. It's published by Sarin Books, which is a Welsh publisher. The story is set in Bermondsey, which is a district in southeast London. It's a beautiful cover. The title, The Stromness Dinner. The main character, like I say, based in Bermondsey. He does construction, painting. I can't get a sense of what it's about from the back synopsis. Well, now that I'm editing this video, all these weeks later on September 15th, I was quite unsatisfied with my lack of a synopsis, so I've done a little bit deeper digging, and in fact, it is, yes, the main character is a builder guy who lives in Bermondsey, but he gets hired by, I think, a friend or an acquaintance to refurbish this guy's dead father's house on the island of Orkney. The town's name is Stromness, and there's lots of cooking and stuff. It sounds like a quiet little Sean book to me. And finally, this is a box. It's a little bit worn. You can see the top there. But I could get it quite cheap online. John O'Hara's Sermons and Soda Water. There are 3 volumes, each with separate titles. Volume 1, The Girl on the Baggage Truck. Volume 2, Imagine Kissing Pete. Volume 3, We're Friends Again. And I'd never heard of, I must have heard of John O'Hara, but nothing that stuck in my memory. And I don't remember, somebody's tweet mentioned these, and when I could get them affordably in this box set, I think I paid about $10 for it. The box itself is pretty good shape except for that, but the books are pretty good. Doesn't look like they've ever been read, or certainly been well looked after. Random House, 3rd printing, 1960. I guess it's 3 novellas. Let's see if is it a novella cycle? Kirkus Reviews says, set in the 20s and 30s in Pennsylvania. One character is a bank teller, son of a doctor. Jim, that's Jim, he's the narrator. And it looks like there's lots of liquor, sex, college life, stories about social class and economic change. Let's hear the first paragraph of the volume 1, which is The Girl on the Baggage Truck. When I was first starting out in New York, I wrote quite a few obituaries of men who were presumably in good health, but who were no longer young. It was the custom on the paper where I worked that a reporter who had no other assignment was given this task, which most reporters found a chore, but that I rather enjoyed. The assistant day city editor would tell you to prepare an obit on some reasonably prominent citizen. You would go to the office library and get out the folder of the citizen's clippings, and for the remainder of the afternoon you would read the clippings and appropriate reference books and reconstruct a life from the available facts, keeping it down to 40 lines or whatever length the subject's prominence had earned. It was a good experience. One time I had to look up Jack Smedley, one of the richest oil men in the United States, and I discovered that his folder was so slim that you could have mailed it for the price of a 2-cent stamp, while a Bronx politician of almost the same name had 6 bulging folders that cluttered up my desk. Later, when the 2 men died, the rich man was a page 1 story all over the world, and the Bronx politician got 30 lines halfway down the column on the obituary page. You got what in more recent times was called a sense of values. Oh, I like that. So I will have to try this trilogy of John O'Hara novellas, collectively called Sermons and Soda Water. All right, people, that is my book haul for now. What do you think? Thanks. Thanks for watching.